This game is dark. Everything from the music, graphics, art direction, and 3D world. So bad that I can't even in good conscience share certain pieces of footage in this video because it's that grim. Not only that, but even when I've set the difficulty level to balanced, I still can't button bash my way to victory. And in a game with no quest markers, guidance, and unforgiving combat, I am left to the realization that I simply suck at video games. Bro, the water kills you. So yeah, join me on this painful journey as we analyze the environment art, lighting, game world, and ask ourselves one very important question. Why does Hell Is Us look like this? Oh boy, this game is dark. And that's the world building it's on. It's just dark game. So we'll do our sort of live geo analysis first. And then we'll do the Unreal View modes, because that's going to specifically draw out lighting. But for this first bit, I want to look at the geometry of some things. So I'm going to use a new trick. So instead of just trying to get the wireframe, I'm going to use Reshade. And again, shout out to Game Art World for this tip. This view mode is basically sort of almost like a tangent normal map. But what it does is it actually just shows the geometric forms. Now, this is a... looking at the geo, they're putting a lot of geo into things. So, this is part of that sort of next-gen approach to things where we're virtualizing geometry and therefore we're not just having a flat wall. Yes, you'll still get this in some games, but this wall here, right? That would usually just be flat with a parallax offset or something like that. Nothing in the geometry itself. We can see there is actual stuff in the geo here that is being deformed. Now, you can do this a few ways. One is, if you're sculpting the texture, you can decimate it, take the lowest decimation level and just use that. That way you get some inkling of forms. Like if you look at a lot of the forms here, it's not like they're throwing a crazy amount of polys at this stuff. You can almost tell it's a lower decimated / triangulated version. Ooh, little hole there. Oh yeah, yeah, I think I want to see it. Into their meshes. Now, foliage-wise, this game was in development for quite a while, a fair few years, so they probably didn't hop on to the... Foliage has always had a bit of an issue with the virtualized workflow, but in more recent years, well, months, they've introduced the... I forgot the technique name, the voxelization, so you're going to start seeing more foliage being actual geo. This is your classical sort of alpha card, which you can tell by the texture on it. Yes, look at some of the walls in here. So again, just seeing very subtle poly shifts. The ground as well. Again, it's not throwing loads of polys. They're using like the lowest decimated. It could be from ZBrush. It could just be crunched down from any automation software. Just so it's got something in the geo. So when the lighting reacts to it. And then when you layer on top of the mesh, the textures and the lighting, it all just feels much more... realistic than a flat texture and relying on lots of shaders. Look at the vehicle. Yeah, all the treads are modeled, which is cool. Usually you would bake those in as a trim sheet, but these are actually modeled out, which again is going to pick up the lighting nicely. Yeah, look at that. It's nice. Debris, very nice stuff. Other than that, nothing too crazy going on here. A lot of subtle poly detail in the floor, which does add up and help a lot of the time with these new workflows. That the top tier of cutting edge game dev, right? They're going to start using this type of workflow and already are in places. Yeah, your typical standard modeling on the cabinets, which is cool. Oh, interesting. Yeah, you can see this. This looks like it was probably. Because this is like a hard surface asset, so what could have been done on this is, if we look back at the... Because it's all a bit wonky on the edges. So it could be that it had a bit of a sculpting pass on, because usually even on hard surface objects you can sculpt away the edges and then decimate it. This edge right here in front of me, this is like your super typical looking... trim smooth border, clay tubes on an edge. So yeah, they're just decimating it out, which looks pretty nice. How's that look in texture view? Yeah, that looks nice. And that's good as well, because you don't have to spend ages trying to retop with a clean low poly. You can just throw in a decimated one, unwrap it. If it's loads of polys, you can unwrap it with external software or within the software itself, depending on the poly count. Rocks as well, again, just decimated rocks. Probably unwrapped in a third-party program. Wood planks. Ooh, this is interesting. Yeah, you can almost see it, right? It looks very faceted, but you can almost see what brushes this would be in ZBrush, and then it's been kind of crunched down again. So it does bring up this interesting meta that, you know, when I used to teach, a lot of environment art students didn't like ZBrush. And when Substance Designer came out, a lot of folks were starting to use that instead of maybe making their sculpts or their textures for sculpts in ZBrush. But what I've seen now is it's almost looped around and come back again, because ZBrush as an environment artist was quite a rare thing. You'd hear about it all the time, like studios like Sony Santa Monica and Naughty Dog, very big usage of ZBrush for texturing and making high poly sculpts. But with this virtualized workflow, I feel as though that's looping back round again, because to get this type of organic damage, you kind of need to sculpt it up, decimate it back to get the forms, and then use your material maps on it to help sell the the additional detail. So I'd say, like, if you're not using ZBrush as an environment artist and you're up and coming, have a look at it. Try and do some basic. You don't have to be crazy with it. Just environment art sculpting is usually the same stuff. It's usually trim smooth border, drag on some alphas, sculpt them back, pay attention to reference, and you'll be good. This does not look sculpted. And when I say sculpted, it doesn't look like it's had an edge pass on potentially. It just looks like a standard hard surface asset, which is cool. And what we'll do in a minute is we'll get this console variables up. We'll have a look at the albedos as well, because the albedos are a little bit dark in this game. Let's look at the main road, see what's going on. Yeah, lovely. Lots of little seams in there. Oh, something. Oh god, get away from them. But yeah, no, I say it's otherwise it's pretty well balanced. Like, they're not throwing millions of polygons for the sake of it. They are actually pulling back on it a little bit. Oh, nasty enemies. Oh, get away from me. And he's dead. Right, that's the organic side. Let's hop over into some console variables. Oops. And let's look at the albedos and talk about albedo maps. Right, let's look at some view modes. So this is more on, because we don't get every view mode when we sort of look at Unreal games like this. But we can get view modes that tie into sort of the lighting, art, and holistic view of why things look the way they look. So we can actually look at the albedos, but we can't look at them in their original resolution. We can see like a surface cachy, blurred looking version. But we can also see some other stuff as well. So let's run through some view modes. So r.lumen visualize. Let's try 1. Yeah, we don't need to use that one to get a point across. 2 is good. So if you watched my Clair Obscure breakdown video, we ran this same CVAR. And if you remember, when something is red, that's when you're letting Lumen kick in for the reflections. It's usually at a lower threshold. So for things that are quite reflective get the love and care they need from Lumen, and things that aren't too reflective, you fall back to your standard method so that you're not rendering everywhere for reflections and going out of memory and going past your frame rate. Now in the Clair Obscure one, we had quite a lot of the stone that was red, which I thought was a bit unoptimal. You could tune down the roughness a tiny bit in the actual contrast and that would go away. In this one, I'm seeing like purposeful optimization here. So their max roughness, it looks like they've set it to 0.32. And when you look at this mode, you only see red on where the puddles are. And that's that to me is purposely done. Otherwise, you would see red on everything. Again, it's more expensive when you let Lumen kick in for that. So having a lower threshold is much better, and then altering your roughness map so this stuff doesn't turn red in areas where you don't have much roughness, like stone and stuff like that, really kicking in on the shine. is key. Like if you had some rain up on here, then yes, it would be red. But this mode is cool. It shows this is what I would probably expect to see in this type of area. Yeah, like the red only pops up for the super wet areas. So that's really cool. Very nice optimization there. We want albedo, so let's do 8. So again, this is a very, very blurry version of albedos because this is what it's using to sort of it's like a representation of what Lumen is looking at, essentially. Otherwise, it would be the full resolution. But this does show the level of brightness of the albedos. So even though it's blurry, it does show the general brightness levels of the albedo. Now, for me, a lot of these albedos are too dark. When albedos are too... As a lighting artist, I can tell you one of the main things a lot of the time we do is when we check scenes is we will often require albedo brightening from the environment art team. And usually it takes a few iterations and then the rest of the game is set to a decent brightness level. But usually lighting artists and maybe material artists as well are the ones that are usually the first to know what brightness levels albedo should be because it has a direct correlation with lighting. I've linked some good resources in the comments about why your albedo brightness is important and why it should be a certain brightness and that it affects how your lighting actually works as well. But yeah, we will always debug albedos. Like for me at the moment, if I look down, some of this stuff seems, even though it's blurry, right? This is not the true albedo, but the brightness of it is. Some of this stuff seems too dark. I would actually brighten it up a little bit because you're going to get less bounce light overall and less material definition through that. And it's hard to describe until you really read up on it, but I am going to shift over in a moment to some good albedo examples and some resources you guys can look at to really balance your albedos and what they should be as well. Let's have a bit of a run around and see what else we can find. Let's go back into that tunnel, actually. I want to see the albedos in there. So, yeah, again, a tad. If you're saying, how do you know if it's too dark? Usually, as like a lighting artist, we're looking at albedos a lot. So we just get like a sixth sense on when something seems too dark and when something seems just about right and when something seems too bright. They aren't crazy dark here, but I would, if I was lighting this area, I would probably request a little bit of brightening and I would double check the values. Saturation is important as well. If you have albedos that are very saturated, that's also something that you don't want to have. You want it to be slightly desaturated as a neutral base to light on top of. And I'm going to cover some examples of this in a moment when we kind of move on here. This floor definitely seems too dark. Pretty hard to see with this view mode, so let's just go back to our standard view. And I just want to run over to this tank and see what we can see here in terms of lighting. All right, let's enable that view mode back up. So it was 8. So yeah, some of this stuff to me, it's not dramatically dark, but it's, I would still work on, I would still brighten it a little bit because I'm used to seeing brighter albedos in general. Funnily enough, these trees actually, they're albedos that look, oh my god, get away from me. I can't see where I'm attacking. The tree albedos actually look pretty good, to be fair. They look nice and bright. But yeah, so now you've seen that, remember what this looks like, because what we're going to do in a moment, we're going to swap over to Miro. I'm going to show you what some albedos look like and what a good practice is for it. Right, this is my little collection I'm adding to over time. And we have some of this on our actual main Lighting for Games board. So if you head over to here, you will see a section called your albedo maps are too dark. How bright should they be? And it links to a lot of documentation on why albedo brightness is important and actually what the values are you should be aiming for. You don't have to be perfect, but I will say as a lighting artist, brighter and more neutral albedos are very, very nice for lighting flexibility. So here's a few that I've gathered. And if I just zoom out, ignore this bottom bit. This is what these are like the tutorials, right? If I look at these first 3 rows, just look at them. You notice how it looks quite neutral, quite consistent. Nothing's really super contrasty. Nothing's really dark. There's darker shades, but overall, when you look at it, it's kind of like consistent. That is what you want. You want a nice, consistent base like this, where everything feels almost the same luminance. There'll be little variations in here, sure, but nothing feels crazy dark here, like we saw with the gameplay just now. Same with this relight. Again, this one feels pretty good. And then this one, this is from one of our student project. Well, I say student project, one of our mentees on the Discord, Leah. Again, really nice albedos, neutral. This is from Scans Factory. So this is actually from Scan Data, which again is a good ground truth. These asset packs are great for lighting in general because their albedos are always a treat. It's not a coincidence that those albedos are like that. Because it works really well with lighting. You can push and pull it in any way you want. Whereas when you have contrasty dark or really saturated albedos, it limits what you can do when you're lighting. So if you want to know how do I know what it should be and where it should be, firstly, check out this PBR Albedo Guide for Lighting Artists. This is a great resource that goes over examples of albedos and its effects on lighting using a lot of grey box meshes. And secondly, if you want to know what sort of value should I be aiming for, should I just randomly make it bright? This is the gold standard here. So I'm going to butcher the name. I apologize for this, but Gregzor's Baron. He's a material artist in the industry. He has calibrated so many different albedos from real life, and he takes the luminance value, which is one of these cells here. And what you can do is you can take it into Photoshop, use the histogram, and look at the mean value, and that number in the mean value is what the luminance of your texture is. So you can actually use Photoshop or anything with a histogram to get the brightness roughly correct. So if you want to learn this stuff, subscribe to this YouTube, get this from Gumroad, look at the videos, and then after a while, when you are used to the values you should be using, you will just know off by heart how bright to make your albedos. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be dead on the number of what it would be from real life. But it does need to be bright, consistent, and not as saturated. And it affects your lighting greatly on this. And usually lighting artists will debug this and send this to environment artists at a studio to fix. And it is one of the most common problems I've seen in the last few years of being a professional, is that a lot of albedo maps are usually too dark. So it is something that we all need to kind of learn to be better on as well. It'll help your material definition. It'll help your lighting. It just helps in so many ways that I can't even describe. If you want the more technical info of that, have a look here as well. And you can see how it affects the lighting, the bounce. But it also kind of makes the materials pop a bit more. When I do these changes, when I make albedos a bit brighter, helps them pop. So yeah, check that out. The resources are on the Lighting for Games hub. And again, a big shout out to the Patreon folks. If you want to join, you can get access to all this content and all these guest talks for only £5 a month. Hopefully this helps. I'll see you guys in the next video.